Our next speaker wants to ignite a passion for life and leadership in everyone he meets. He has a high activity level and an open, persistent learning spirit which makes him unstoppable. Last night you saw him receive, in a tie, the 2015 Sales Leader of the Year Award for the Americas region. This morning he's going to speak to us about success with the LMI basics. Please welcome our next speaker, Stephen Daniels from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada.
It's quite an honor. This is the first time I get a chance to present at a conference. I will tell you, obviously, like most of you, we do a lot of speaking in front of groups of people on a fairly regular basis. And when Randy reached out to Frank, and Frank reached out to me as potentially coming to speak in front of you guys, I immediately thought to myself, hell no. Okay? And I have no problem whatsoever accepting keynote opportunities at home in my hometown that I'm from, and I do it quite often. But speaking in front of you guys, I thought, no way, not a chance. So immediately in LMI spirit, what did I have to say to Frank? Right away, I had to say yes. Our job is to make people feel uncomfortable, and if we're not doing it for ourselves, then what are we really doing, right? I tell my clients on a regular basis, we're going to go through a journey. It's going to be amazing. It's an opportunity for you to change your life for the rest of your life, and it's going to get really uncomfortable. And if I do my job really well, every single time that we talk, you're going to be uncomfortable. How does that make you feel? And everybody says, well, I'm a little uncomfortable. And I say, great. So we're off to a good start. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background on myself and why I could possibly be somebody that could talk to you about the LMI basics and some of the success. I truly believe that if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that's really why I feel very honored to be on this stage. If I can do it, anybody can do it. We have some incredible people in this room, some people that I look up to, and every single one of us in here, we are only a percentage are we putting forward right now and what we're actually capable of becoming and doing on a regular basis. I come from a small area on the east coast of Canada, Moncton, New Brunswick. I was born in Halifax, which is the largest city in that area, which is 450,000 people. That's a very large city in eastern Canada, okay? The city that I live in now, Moncton, is about 100,000 people, and that's one of the larger areas in Atlantic Canada. So that'll give you an idea of the population. It's not very big. The entire area region is probably somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 million people range. Okay? Prior to being part of LMI, I was born really, really young, as most of you were. And I was one of those kids like everyone else. Up to the age of 5 years old, I believed I could do anything. I was the king of the hill, right? And we all think that way. I think we really have a much better understanding of who we are from the ages of 0 to 5 years old, right? I can do anything. Don't stop me. Don't get in my way. I'm not going to, I don't need anybody's help. Leave me alone. I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to play in the backyard. Don't bug me unless I'm hungry, and then come tell me that there's food ready, right? And then we go to school, and we do that for 13 years. And the school system was developed to, in the industrial age, to create employees. And when we're 18 years old, we graduate from high school. Very much my story. Graduate from high school, and I should be better prepared at that moment in my life than ever before to make the decision what I want to do with the rest of my life. And that is the exact moment that I probably am the least prepared. And 95%, statistics tell us, 95% of people that graduate from high school have no idea what they want to do next. And I was one of the 95. Okay, so 1 out of 20 actually have an idea, and even then it's probably fairly vague. And I like to use this when we're talking about visualization tools. If you take a photograph that's 90% in focus, do you keep it? You throw it away. 90% was always really good from, school perspective, but as a photograph, we throw it away. So even those kids that graduate from high school that have 90% focus and what they really want, it's still not enough for us to accomplish. So we graduate from a school system that teaches us to answer questions and follow orders as opposed to ask ourselves our questions. So our self-awareness is extremely low. So this is something that I've always been passionate about. Went on after that, I went to university and I took psychology. And the reason why I took psychology is because I was really good in sciences when I was in high school, and I went to Bible college, and the Bible college that I went to didn't offer science. They only offered psychology. That was the closest thing to science that I could take, so I took psychology. Okay? They consider it a social science, so I thought, hey, it's got science in the name, so great. So little did I know that it was actually phenomenal education for me. I learned so much in that time period, but it really wasn't what I wanted. So after 3 years, I made a smart decision. I didn't know it was smart at the time. I just said, I'm really not interested in what I'm doing, so I'm going to stop school and I'm going to go to work. So I quit school at that time after 3 years, moved out to Western Canada in Alberta in the Rocky Mountains, and started working as a maintenance manager at a small, tiny little hotel called the Red Carpet Inn. And in that time period, and at that time it was about 1997, the maritime provinces, people from the maritime provinces had a phenomenal reputation for being really hard workers. In the maritime provinces, we have a little saying, we're used to being the have-not area of Canada, and most of Canada looks at the Maritimes as a place to avoid. Right? That's fine, they're the little people down at the edge of the country, and we're going to stay here in the center of the universe in the bigger provinces and that kind of thing. So when we had jobs in Atlantic Canada, we tend to work really hard to keep them, even if we didn't love them. In fact, where I grew up, jobs were the dream job for everybody that I talked to in school. And it's funny how many times people said this. The dream job was to work for the government. I can't wait to graduate high school because I'm going to get a government job. Doesn't that sound exciting? Right? So, and the reason why they did that is because they don't want to take risks. I come from an area where risk adversity is at its highest. I want to find something that I feel secure. I don't care if I like it. I just want to make some good money, make sure that when I do retire, I'm going to have a pension. And I can do as little as I possibly can, and I can't get fired. These are really, truly what people thought. And that, to me, just does not sound exciting. And I came from a family where my parents were a little bit on the entrepreneurial side. My mother was a school teacher. My father tried several different businesses. And later in life, he actually became a pastor. He's a pastor today of a small community church still in Digby, Nova Scotia, where I grew up, which is a town of 3,000 people. And I'll skip back to where I was working out west. I started working in this little Red Carpet Inn as a maintenance manager. Because we had such a good reputation of being hard workers, I called the hotels as I was driving across the country and said, do you have any jobs? And the very first place that answered was the Red Carpet Inn, and they said, yes. Where are you from? I'm from Nova Scotia. Well, absolutely, we got a job for you, you just show up. When can you be here? I was somewhere in the middle of the country at that point. I said, I don't know, it's 2 days. Give me 2 days and I'll be there. And they said, absolutely, we'll get you started as soon as you get here. So they gave me a maintenance manager job, or a maintenance job, where I was fixing doorknobs and things like that. It was better than psychology at that point. So, and I just wanted to make a little money. I had about $35,000 in student debt at that point, and I wanted to pay a little bit of it off. And I was living in one of the most beautiful places in the world, in the Rocky Mountains. And slowly, over the course of 4 years, I'll make the story short. Over the course of 4 years, I worked my way up from a maintenance guy at this small hotel to actually managing one of the largest hotels in the Banff area. 4 years. And I thought, that's fantastic. I'm 24 years old and I'm managing this, the fourth largest property in Banff, which is, if anybody's been there, it is all hotels. That's all they have, is hotels and ski hills. People go there to ski and hike and stay in hotels, right? So I'm managing this hotel. I don't even know how I got this job. I slowly worked my way. I just worked harder than anyone else. And it's a really transient town, so I worked my way up and eventually was managing. But I loved leading people. I was always inspired by, when I was a supervisor, how could I invest back into the staff? I just loved it. And when I became manager, how could I invest back into the staff? And it was a short career for me because the hotel industry just wasn't something I was passionate about, but I loved the people part. And it was always something that I felt drawn towards, as the people part, is how do I invest more into people? And the hotel industry just wasn't right for me. So after 2 years managing this hotel, I went back to school, switched to business, because business is something I've always been drawn to. So a long story short, another 2 years on top of that, finished my business degree, and I had a minor in psychology. So the psychology degree is something that I use so much more than my business degree. Anybody that's taken business in school, you realize, and you start a business, you realize it probably holds you back from a whole lot more than actually educates you on how to be successful in business. So getting out of the conditioning that the business degree actually gave me, I started working on what are some of the things that I need to learn to get better at. I decided that I wanted to learn how to sell. So I took a sales job, worked really, really hard at landing a sales job that where I knew I could grow. I got really lucky, and I found some of the greatest leaders in the city that I live in to work for and to train me to be able to sell. And they were all about relationships, and they inspired me a great deal. So working for them for 2 years, I made a connection to another company called Kinetic Interactive, and I became the director of sales and marketing for this small marketing firm, and another wonderful education. Okay. Long story short, that led me to become a client of LMI. So an LMI licensee approached Kinetic and said, here's what we're going to do. And we all said, sure, let's, whatever. I don't know what this LMI thing is. No one had ever heard of LMI in Moncton before. If they had, it was a very small group of individuals. So we said, I guess we could try it and see. And there was a small group of 3 of us that got together on a regular basis to go through this LMI EPP process. Well, at that time, it was weekly, and we got together for the first 2 sessions. I threw myself into this thing because I'm thinking, okay, it's development, and I'm a learner just by natural. That's my natural tendency, is I just want to grow. I want to be a sponge. And I threw myself into this program, and within 2 weeks I said, I cannot believe that people get paid to do this. There's no way. People can actually make money developing other people, and that's their full-time job. You don't have to get a job in a leadership position to do this. You can actually spend time focusing on developing others. My mind was blown at this point. I would do it for free. In fact, I had been, right? Most of my life. So when I saw that there was an opportunity for me to do this full time, I said, okay, well, what do I got to do? So I was talking to the licensee about it and talking to Frank at the national head office, and what is it that I need to do? What are the steps that I need to take? Within 2 weeks, I had quit my job and started working as an associate with that LMI licensee. Huge risk. I was doing really well at the sales and marketing company. Really well, and really I liked what I did again, but I wasn't passionate about it, and I learned a lot of the skills that I could use to get out there and sort of network. But now I started in something that I just had no idea. I was just clueless. I just knew that I love people, and I believe in people generally more than they believe in themselves. That's always been, I've been that guy in my family, where everybody sort of goes to me because when they walk away, they always feel better about their scenario, and I don't let people bring me down to that level. That's who I am. I tend to lean towards the positive side. So when I started in this business, I cut all ties to the past and I dove in, which it's really, 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 really difficult at best, if not impossible, to be successful in this business unless you're doing it full time. It really is, because you got to throw yourself into this business. And if you're distracted and you're pulled into too many different directions, then you're never going to be able to give yourself 100% to one of those directions, right? And we've all heard those quotes before where we're talking about, the really successful people are really, really good at one thing, and that's what they focus on. Peter Drucker says you want to work on your strengths so much that you make your weaknesses irrelevant. And that's really what LMI is all about. We want to focus on our strengths. So we need to throw ourselves into this full time. And it's all about the basics. I just started a new group, new EPP group, literally 2 weeks ago. And I went through our goal setting session for 2.5 hours with a group of 10 people. And I had somebody right at the end, and I always ask at the end, and most of you probably do as well, what was the best thing that we discussed today? Because we need to walk away with some takeaways. What's the best thing that we discussed today? I want to get something different from each and every one of you. And there's always one in the group that looks at you and says, you know, everything that we discussed today, I've heard it all before. And she was really pushing back. I've heard it all before. This is nothing new. You're not telling me anything I haven't heard before. And that's kind of the attitude that she had, right? And because there's always one, you kind of get used to that after a while, right? And I looked at her and I said, you know what? She's 100% right. Let's talk to you guys as a group. She's 100% right. I didn't say anything that was rocket science. There's 1,000 books out there that'll tell you everything exactly what I said. But I said there's a difference between knowing it and applying it. And I said that's what this program is all about. You're not going to learn anything new in this program other than you're going to learn how to stay accountable to yourself and to apply it. And every single person in the room, including yourself at that point, said, yeah, you know what, that's true. How much of this am I really applying versus knowing in the first place? We all know it. I talk about fitness a lot. It's something else that I'm really passionate about. And we all know how to get in better shape. Calories in, calories out, more exercise. Right? So why do we need personal trainers? It's the exact same reason. Coaches make us better. Right? They help us stay accountable to a higher level of ourselves. We know we're capable of more if we really are honest with ourselves. Right? And that's really what a coach will help you decide on and stay accountable to, which just excites me. That's what gets me out of bed, like I said, every Monday morning when I spoke last night. Right? So that being said, I started thinking about, okay, my passion comes from change and big change. I've always kind of thought big. And Atlantic Canada is something that I'm very passionate about because we're a have-not area, or at least that's what they say. I want to build something that's going to influence everybody in the area. And not just the small town that I'm in or the small group of community individuals that I work with. How can we influence change on a bigger scale? And it's going to take time, but it's also going to take people. And I know there are more people out there than just me that feel this way. And finding those people to be able to develop and create a team to be able to get there. And Kathy and I actually live literally an hour and a half apart from one another. We're both on the East Coast. I hear great comments about her all the time. We get a chance to work together rarely. Probably should work together more often because of the small area that we're in. But we're building a reputation in the Atlantic Canada, and it's growing. And I have a team that's growing, and we both are really inspired by change and what we're capable of. Despite the fact that there were so many good things going on in her office and in my office in this small area, we're still just scratching the surface. There's so much more to be done as of yet. Why I joined LMI, I will be completely honest with you. I grew up in a home, the same as most of you, where your parents look at you and they say, you can do absolutely anything you want to do as long as you put your mind to it. Right? We've all heard that before. Right? But then you grow up, and as you get older, you start to realize your parents say that, but they don't actually believe it. Because they're not living that. Everybody says that, but nobody does it. And so I went through a good part of my young adult life realizing that's not true. I'm just gonna live the American dream, get a job, make as much money as I can, and retire as early as I possibly can, and not necessarily really love everything that I do. And then when LMI was introduced into my life, for the first time I realized my parents were right. Whether they knew it or not, they were right. And I realized at that point, I have got to spread this message. Our parents are all telling us that on a regular basis, but they don't know it's true. And this is a system that we bring to the table that actually helps people realize when their parents said that to us, even though they didn't believe it, it is true. And we can accomplish anything that we put our mind to. We just have to stay accountable to it. We have to visualize it, and we have to make it 100% clear, and we have to follow through on the actions that will get us there in the first place. And success is a journey. That's not something else. It's not something that has an end point where here, I'm here so I can relax. And a lot of people think of education that way. I graduated from university, it's time to stop learning. Now it's time for me just to work. That's not the way it works. In fact, the education just begins at that point, right? Pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone just begins. 1/10 of 1% is what I tell my clients. 1/10 of 1%. You should grow 1/10 of 1% every day. And imagine the compound effect that you'll have over time. If you want to become more outgoing, say hi to somebody in an elevator that you wouldn't normally say hi to. That's 1/10 of 1%. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but that 1/10 of 1% will push you to want to take it even a step further the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And the goals that you're focusing on today, 10 years from now, you'll look back and say, gosh, that was nothing. Why did I ever struggle with the idea of accomplishing that goal? Right? That's so small in comparison to what I know I'm capable of. And it's really interesting how our mind tricks us into believing that we're incapable of things that really aren't that difficult. So, in 2013, following through on the basics, which I will explain in greater detail here in a minute, I had a big year. So, 2013 was my office's best year that we had. So, leading up to that year, I will tell you, my first year, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to make 40 cold calls a day for the first 6 months. And I won't say that I hit that every single day, but pretty stinking close. How much do I love cold calls? No, I don't love them. People that say that they love them, I wish I had that vigor and that spirit in me, and I didn't love it, but I used it as an education opportunity. And I made that commitment to myself that if I'm going to be successful in this business, I've got to get out there. And I'll tell you what, one thing that taught me, I would say my average was probably somewhere between 36 and 40 a day for 5 days a week. Any new market that I need to enter, no problem. I know that I could do it again if I had to. And that 6 months seems like a long time when you're looking forward, but when you look back, you realize it was nothing. You know, I look back over the last 6 months and realize how far I've come in such a short period of time, not how long it took me to get here. It's incredible. So those 40 cold calls a day, I practiced on so many people. I practiced and practiced. I would call people and say, here's my cold call. What do you think? The tone wasn't good on this. You need to change this. You sound too much like a salesperson, this and that. And I went over it and over it, and I called all my friends on a daily basis. And I would call 40 people separate from that. And you get a lot of answering machines and things like that, and you learn little tricks on how to get people to call you back after you leave a message. And I always leave a message. And I always make it personal, and this is what I say. I had Steve Daniels calling from LMI. I just have a quick question for you. Here's my cell. Can you give me a call back when you get a second? That's it. They may say, oh, who's LMI? Well, I don't know. But if they never call me back and I call them again, they're going to remember who LMI is, first of all. They're going to say, oh, I've heard of you before. I don't remember where. Secondly, everybody has time for a quick question. Right? And that's how I always start the call. And my goal was to get off the phone in 2 minutes. So I'm calling 40 a day. That's a lot. It takes a lot out of you. But by the end of it, I was changing my tone, adjusting my tone so that I could get off the phone in 20 minutes. And my close percentage went from about 1 in 20 to book a meeting down to about 1 in 8 because of the changing and adjusting of my tone in my voice and the shortening of what I needed to say on the phone. So my value proposition is Steve Daniels, I work for a company called Leadership Management International. We have a mentoring process that guarantees success. If you had access to such a process, would you be interested? It's, again, you have a hard time saying no. Right? If there was a mentorship process available to you that would guarantee success for you personally and for your company, would you be interested in learning more? Absolutely. And no inflection in the voice because we sound too much like a salesperson. So I went from 1 to 20 to 1 in 8. And then once I started getting a little busier in the business, I had less time, obviously, for cold calls. but you also increase your referrals and your resales. And my office right now, as it stands, is about 85% resale referral. So the cold calling is dramatically reduced. And that was within the first 2 years. And we've been able to continue to grow based on that. But getting out there and making those cold calls, and I know cold calling has changed. For me, it was on the phone. Cold calling could be emails, it could be LinkedIn, it could be all those kind of things. But for me, I needed to do it on the phone because I needed to prove to myself that I could do it, right? And I could pick up a phone book anywhere in any city and be able to do it again if I had to. And like Paul Meyer always said, there's no such thing as a bad economy. If I need to make 50 calls instead of only 40, then that's what I got to do. I know that I could do it. So we had a huge year working on the basics in 2013. We had the top sales in all of Canada, which for me was a huge success. And the amount of sales that we had gotten, I was very proud of, absolutely. But deep inside of me, I knew that we could still do so much better. That's how I was feeling. I thought, you know what, this is an incredible honor to be the top sales in the country for the first time ever. But we are still scratching the surface. Our office should be 10 times bigger than what it is. There's too much work to be done, right? And what am I not doing? And part of the reason why we had such a big year in 2013, as you all know, is the activities that you do prior. So 6 months into 2012, the activities from June on is what really started to create the success in 2013 in the first place. So 6-month lead time really to start closing a lot of those sales in 2013 because it's all about building relationships. And in Atlantic Canada, very similar to Miramichi as a whole, you have to earn a relationship with people, right? You can't just go in if they don't like you and they don't trust you like anywhere else, but it takes a little bit more. You need to earn a relationship, and the people need to be able to trust you before they'll actually work with you. And I know it works the same everywhere to a certain degree. The Atlantic Canada is like one big small town. Everybody seems to know each other. Everybody is connected to someone somehow, which is a great thing when you're in there and you're trusted. But if nobody knows who you are or who LMI is, it's very difficult to break through some of those barriers, right? And it is a tough business when you're trying to educate people why they need to work with you in the first place, right? So the work that we did in 2012, 2013 translated into a very big sales year for us, or a good sales year from our growth, and that was about the 4th year that I was in the business. And I had a personal distraction that happened that year as well. So halfway through the year, my wife and I split up. And only because of the work that had been going on earlier in that year were we able to still finish the year strong in the first place. Because I was so distracted by trying to get my marriage to stay back together, or to stay together in the first place. It's not what I wanted. My parents just celebrated their 45th anniversary. That was my ideal. I got married once. That was my plan. I don't want to do this again. I made a decision. I made vows. I meant them on that day. And unfortunately, I married somebody that didn't necessarily believe in the same values that I did. And quite honestly, there was a lot of distraction through the development process of the business that I didn't realize until afterwards as well, until after we split up. This is not something that she really believed in, which I took it very personal. It's not something she really believed that I could do, because there was so many struggles in the early years. And that's really how it came out in our relationship. In fact, I was so excited to come home with great news that I would share it with her immediately, and she didn't want to hear it. And I took that personally, like it was a slight against me. It was actually because she wasn't happy with herself. She wasn't happy with what she was doing, and I think she almost took it personal that I was happy and excited to be doing what I was doing and something that made me passionate. So unfortunately, I chose the wrong partner in life at that time, and probably would have accelerated the business in the office had I been alone, maybe even faster. Because every time I came home, I had to separate business from my personal life. So I would come home from the office, and most people, they go home for solace. For me, I would go home and it would be the opposite. I was more comfortable at the office because I love what I did so much. And I wanted to be able to share it because it's part of my life. You don't do this business because it's a job. You do this business because it's a mission. It's part of who you are. And it was hard for me to go home and not be able to express myself, who I was, the same way that I did with my clients. So that became a bit of a distraction as a result. There you go. I thought I'd add the sound effects. Okay, so 2014, I had a bad year. Okay, the latter half of 2013, the basics weren't there. I wasn't following through on what I needed to be doing in order to continue the business. And our office is small enough right now that it really depends on me. All right, at this time, it really depended on my activities. 95% of the sales were coming in as a result of my activities, and about 90% of the facilitation was done by me. Now, none of my clients would have ever known because I was still so passionate about what I was doing. In fact, when they found out that I was in the process of getting a divorce, they were shocked. For 6 months, the ones that I was working with and trying to work that out, they had no idea. They found out later. And that'll tell you how excited I still was to be at the office regardless. But my activities over and above, not in the coaching sessions, were distracted, and I was out of the office a little more than I probably should have. So results in the early 2014 was low, and I came to the 2014 conference and I said, what am I doing? I was surrounded by a group of people, most of you in the room, plus some other. There was it was a huge, huge group of people that inspired me, just like you guys. And I thought, what the heck am I doing? This is something that I love. This is my passion. This is my dream. I'm retired. I just have to follow through on who I truly am and be part of this business, and I'm letting it slip. I'm letting it slip away. And right after the conference in May 2014, I said, that's it. It's time for me to get back to the basics. I wasn't doing my monthly planning. I wasn't doing my daily planning. I wasn't doing my tracking of my activities. I wasn't doing any of that at this point. In fact, if you go back to my time during that 6-8 month period of time, you'll see very little activity in there at all. And I realized that. This is crazy. So when I went back to the office, I did my monthly plan for May, right after the conference. And everybody has a mission purpose that they put at the top. For me, I put start at zero. And that was my mission and purpose for the rest of 2014. And it had been for most of 2015 as well. What I meant by start from zero was I needed to start like I was starting fresh from business. I had no clients. What would I do if I was starting the business today? And I had to start from zero, and I had to go back to the basics. So daily planning, doing my imperative and important, as tedious as that may seem sometimes, following through, blocking your schedule, as some other people have mentioned, I needed to do that. Not managing my time, but allocating it to the high payoff activities. I needed to be doing that. I needed to have a time picture that was clear so that everyone in my office could see what it was that I was doing. I had people in my office, so spending time with them was a high payoff activity as well. And it's really difficult to lead a group of individuals when you're doing all of the wrong things, right? And being able to live a balanced life. It's really, really important for us to be able to say, if it's possible, I'm going to be coaching you on how to better balance your life, but I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to work 80 hours a week, but you can do your job in 40. So I needed to demonstrate and be a product of the product. And the only way to do that is to spend the proper time planning. So I spent an awful lot of time in the planning and then acting on my plan and starting from zero. So I went back to cold calling, not 40 a day like I was. I didn't need to. And there was a lot of warm calling and a lot of resales. And really, there was such an amazing group of trusted clients that invested into us, and some of them that knew what was going on. An incredible group of individuals. I feel very blessed to be working with the people that I work with on a daily basis. So after I kicked my own butt and working extremely hard, focusing on the basics and going through and it starts with the goal, obviously. I knew what it was that I wanted to achieve. I hadn't done a 100-program year ever. That was my goal. I set that in 2014, and I said, I'm doing it. I have to. Canada is a big country in size, but we also have we have a good-sized population, and the need is there. So working the basics, monthly planning, daily planning, goal setting, and demonstrating as a product of the product to our clients, following through and going back to some of the basics when I first started the business in the first place. There we go. It's almost like it's right on my remote. 2015, we had our best year. So without a doubt in my mind, the number one reason why that happened is because I set a goal. No doubt in my mind. And it was such a clearly defined goal. I knew it was 100 programs. I knew that I was going to hit 100 programs before we even started the year. And beyond that, we grew the revenue by 40%. So it wasn't just about programs either. 40% is a huge number in any business. And we've been in business now for 7 years. My office has been operating now and growing the business 40% over our previous best year. So 2014 was a bad year. We dropped percentage quite a bit, and we were able to recover in less than a year. And not only recover, but actually exceed our previous bests. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, we're still just scratching the surface. There is so much need. The city that I live in is 100,000 people. Some of you live in bigger areas, some of you live in smaller areas. It doesn't matter. We're only separated by 6 people, as we were talking about, 6 degrees of separation. There is absolutely no need for anyone to believe that they can't do it right where they are. There is an incredible amount of need. And I love the fact that Paul Meyer always said that he was a reverse paranoid. Right? Most paranoid people are people that feel like everyone is conspiring against them. Where Paul Meyer always said, I feel like everyone's conspiring to help me, conspiring to be my friend before I even walk in that door. And something struck me yesterday, and I want to share this with you. We really are changing cultures one person at a time in organizations. And we are working with companies. We have a lot of pushback from the companies that we work with, especially HR departments. We'll go in and they believe that we're a competitor of theirs, right? As opposed to somebody that's there to help them. A lot of HR departments say, well, we already do development. We have it all internal, right? The funny thing about it is, and this just sort of popped in my mind, maybe I heard it or read it somewhere else, but most companies expect people that have never been developed to develop people to develop people. Okay, let me say that again. Most people, or most companies, are expecting people that have never been developed to develop people to develop people. And that's the reason why LMI is so relevant. We walk into an organization, and most companies, you see the leadership is somebody that was promoted because they were really good at something. Right, I have a client, a trucking company back in Atlantic, Canada, and they have dock hands and things like that, and the best dock hand gets promoted to the dock supervisor. Because they were really good at what they did, they get promoted to become the supervisor. And you will ask the HR VP there, and he'll tell you they usually fizzle out because they have no idea what they're doing. They don't know how to lead people. Right? And most organizations, they develop or they put people in charge of other people because they're really good at something, but they were never developed to develop people. And the difference between a manager and a leader is a manager is someone that manages processes, and a leader is somebody who develops leaders. And if you're not developed to develop leaders, how are you supposed to develop leaders? You can read a whole lot of books, but if you're not applying what you know, and most of us don't because we're not conditioned that way, right? And that's why one-day workshops don't work, is because we need spaced repetition. And it has to start here. I cannot inspire any of my clients to push themselves out of their comfort zone if I'm not willing to do the same thing. I need to be able to be ready to push myself in order to push them. Right? I have a quote that I want to share with you. Now, this is the first time, I use this quote all the time. This is the first time I've ever spoken this quote while South Africans are in the room. That was spoken by a South African. So this is kind of interesting for me. This is a first. It is Nelson Mandela, and he says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and famous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in all of us. And when we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." That's exactly why I do what I do. We are capable of so much more, and that's what we're so scared of. I ask people all the time, why don't you write your goal down? It's because we're afraid to be accountable to our goal. Why does it work when we do? Because we're accountable to our goal. It's because we're afraid of what we're capable of that we don't write it down. 1 in 20 in every group, not this one, but in every other group, is the only one that will write down their goals. Right? Because they're the ones that know that it works. 19 out of 20 are the people that we know they're capable of more, and they know deep down inside they're capable of more, and they need to be inspired by the people that do already. And that's us. And that's what I'm so excited to be a part of. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I appreciate your time.